Друзья, я приглашаю на эту сцену Адама Вазири, человек, который будет открывать нашу конференцию. И те люди, которые находятся в холле, много чего пропустят. Это человек-директор в Vehicle в компании, которая во многом связана с комплайенсом в криптоиндустрии. Поверьте, это одна из вещей, которая будет горячим трендом весь ближайший год, а то и дальше, если мы все не развалим к чертовой матери. Итак, давайте начнем. Adam, welcome. I said to you, I have a tricky, maybe some funny question. It's kind of to warm up both together, and we then start to talk. You know, I found information that Bitcoin Magazine has called you Bitcoin pioneer. I don't know, so few people which we can call Bitcoin pioneer, like, I don't know, maybe Roger Ver, or how you feel yourself with this bright title?
Well, I mean, I don't like titles as a start. I think titles don't really suit me. But for me, when I started as a lawyer in blockchain, there were no other lawyers practically in the whole of Europe that were specializing in this area. And so for me, in the beginning, I had to work in creating legislation, creating regulation, and creating clarity for Bitcoin businesses at the time, because it was all about Bitcoin at that time. And so maybe people saw, okay, you're trying to lead the way a little bit.
It's great. I hope you enjoy Kyiv. Друзья, я приглашаю Адама выступить, и я уверен, что этот доклад будет вам крайне интересен.
Thank you very much. And it's a real pleasure to be here in Ukraine. It's my first time in Ukraine. I have tried many times to come to Ukraine. Different mic. I have tried many times to come to Ukraine to talk about Bitcoin and regulation, but I didn't have the occasion. I mean, people invited me to come and speak, but I wasn't possible at that time. So I'm very happy to be here today speaking with you guys. Because for me, the Ukraine, I've been working in Bitcoin ever since roughly about 2013. So in the early days, there were not many countries that were so interested in Bitcoin, interested in technology. But what was very evident very early on was that there was an expertise within the Ukraine that was I could see and I could observe. Even early on, you know, some of the great developers, core developers, or people involved in the technology, deeply technically involved in the technology, came from the Ukraine. So I think that is an incredible thing for the Ukraine, and it's an incredible thing for blockchain technology as such. In fact, one of the first persons I met in blockchain, when I just specialized in this area, I met a few people in London, and then I was invited to go and speak at an event in Vienna. And one of the first persons I met that I was very impressed with was a Ukrainian, a doctor of cryptography, who explained to me how Bitcoin worked. So, you know, you guys have great expertise in this area, and you should be very proud of it. So, a little bit about me. I discovered Bitcoin roughly about 2012, and I was introduced to the technology through one of my family members. And when I discovered the power of this technology, at the time I was working in compliance, and I was working to protect technology through intellectual property. And when I discovered the power of this technology, I decided that I would essentially quit my job. And I decided that it was so important, this technology, it was so groundbreaking, this technology, that it would be completely nonsensical to do anything else with my time but invest in the education of what this technology can bring to the world and assist in the bringing together of this industry, which at the time was very nascent, very small and almost underground. But now, of course, is much more established. But at the time, not many people really knew what was going on. And any perception people had of the technology was actually very negative. People thought, oh, this is for the Silk Road. Oh, this is for drugs. Oh, this is for illegal activity. And that was the very strong public perception at the time. So to start and dedicate yourself to this industry at such an early stage when people had a negative perception of the industry was, why would I do that? It's almost a sacrifice because you don't know which direction the technology is going to go in. However, it's because you believe in the potential of it. And you guys here today are here because you too believe in the potential of this technology. Otherwise, you would not be listening to me, and you would not be here at a conference about blockchain. And the potential, the interesting thing about this technology is when you learn more about it, you realize that you know nothing about it. And that is a very great thing. And so it's a humbling experience to learn about this technology, because the more you learn about it, the less you learn about it. Because the potential, no one really knows how far this technology will go. And every time people talk about blockchain, every time, they always relate it to the internet. They always say, oh, blockchain is like the internet in 1993. And it is true. It is very true in that regard. Because at that time, people were very excited about the potential of the internet, about the potential for international seamless communication across borders, about what can you do when you bring commerce to the internet and you create e-commerce. People were very excited about that, but they did not know exactly how far the technology would go. So they were discovering the potential of that technology. And it took many, many years, in fact, to realize how mature this technology could be, how profitable the businesses could be. Amazon in the beginning was nothing. It was just an idea. Oh, well, we're going to sell books online. Well, that's a crazy idea. But now Amazon is not a crazy idea. It's a highly profitable enterprise and is growing at an extremely rapid pace even today. So blockchain, in a way, is like the internet. Of course, this is the analogy we draw. But the potential, I would argue, is much greater than the internet itself in terms of what it can do for the world. And from my perspective is a legal perspective first. My perspective, or the value that I can add for this industry, is from a legal and regulatory perspective. So my perspective, if you want, is how the law, how regulation can support the development of this technology, can support the unraveling of its potential. And so I have spent a lot of time thinking about how far this technology will go, and I've ended up with one conclusion. And this conclusion is Web 3.0. You may have heard of this terminology. It sounds like a buzzword, but the notion is that the internet, as we know, if we can change the slides, sir. Oh, I have the clicker. That's okay. That the internet, as we know the internet, is a centralized infrastructure. The consumer internet is centralized. For example, if you want to go and connect with your friend, you need to go to Facebook. You need to sign up with Facebook. You need to sign in to Facebook, and you need to connect to their server. and then you need to send the message to your friend. The internet is centralized. And you may have noticed today, has anyone tried to use Telegram today? It's not working. Why is it not working? Anyone know? Sorry? Well, it's because the consumer internet is centralized. We rely upon the servers of the service providers. We rely upon their servers. We rely upon them giving us access to the service, giving us access to connecting with a friend. And if Telegram goes down, then you cannot connect with your friend. But Web 3.0, those centralized institutions will dissipate. We will not rely upon centralized institutions for services, and you will be able to connect with your friend in a new version of Telegram, in a decentralized version of Telegram. And so the world will interact at a peer-to-peer level. It means there will be intermediaries, there will be people standing in the middle and providing a service. But broadly speaking, the world will interact on a one-to-one basis across borders. A person in the Ukraine interacting directly with a supplier in China, connecting directly with that person through no centralized service, but through a decentralized service that does not rely upon any central authority. Entering into an agreement with no central authority. Conducting the trade with no central authority. Settling the trade with no central authority. That is Web 3.0. And if you believe that that is the future of blockchain, then it is revolutionary in the way that we have conceived of the world. The internet has improved the world, but this is revolutionary in the way that the world will connect and the world will transact. So then the question is, well, if you believe that, if you believe that's the future of blockchain, then the second question is, which network is going to be the right network? And I've done a lot of thinking about this because, you know, people say, oh, private blockchain, public blockchain, things like this dichotomy between the two technologies. And I conclude, and it's a logical, common sense conclusion, that the internet thrived because it was an open innovation platform. It was very easy just to connect with an email protocol which is open and send an email. I don't see private blockchains as being the infrastructure for the scaling of Web 3.0. For the scaling of Web 3.0, we need permissionless blockchains such as Ethereum, Neo, some of these public blockchains. Those are the ones that will be the infrastructure that we will rely upon. Now, that's not to say, it is not to say that private blockchains will not be used. They will be used without question. Sidechains will be used without question. But all of that, at some point, will connect into a public blockchain. And so my belief is that public blockchains will be the infrastructure that we will rely upon. Now, what services will be provided on this Web 3.0? Well, we have applications. We all know what applications are. When you take your hardware, your phone, you open up an operating system, and then you access an application on your operating system and connect to a centralized service. Well, in the Web 3.0, there will be, of course, applications. There will be services, but they will be decentralized application, providing not an online service, but an on-chain service. But if you believe that what I'm saying is correct, and I believe I'm correct because I'm saying it, but if you don't, if you agree with what I'm saying, then the one thing that's missing And the big thing that's missing in the Web 3.0 infrastructure is compliance. It is not possible to use the current blockchain systems as they are today for real-world transactions. It's not possible. There are limitations. And so we have to address those limitations. Before I go into that, addressing those limitations is about, well, Bitcoin, is amazing. It's an incredible store of value, but it is a pseudonymous blockchain network. In other words, if I have Bitcoin and I transfer it to someone else, it is on a public network, but the person that receives the Bitcoin does not know for sure if I sent the Bitcoin or if someone else sent the Bitcoin. It is because in Bitcoin, the connection between the address on the ledger and the identity of the person doing the transaction is not there. There is no bridge between the human identity and your identity on the blockchain. And so there is the necessity in order for us to do real-world transactions. If I want to sell you a car, I'm going to need to know who you are. I'm not going to do it in a pseudonymous network. I'm going to do it in a network where I know who the counterparty is. So it's necessary to create a system for linking identities to transactions. But when we are building these identity systems, we have to keep in mind the principles and the spirit of decentralization. So when we, for example, my company QRC, which builds these products, when we think about regulatory technology products, we build on the notion of user control. It means Bitcoin empowers people. Users have control. So therefore, when we build a product to achieve compliance, users still need to have control, that they don't give up control to a third party. They retain control of their data. They retain control of their assets, but they do it in a way that is compliant. For example, an example of what not to do in Web 3.0 is set up a service like Coinbase. Coinbase has the private keys of all of its users. As a result, it is creating like a bank that you have to trust. If Coinbase goes down, like Telegram today, then you lose your assets. This is against the spirit of Web 3.0. So when you build compliance in Web 3.0, you must still put the user first and give them control. And that is important because if you give the user control, then the applications will rely upon less intermediaries, less people involved in the transaction, and a more efficient architecture for commerce. And what I find really interesting, and it never really happens like this, that a new trend emerges in regulation that supports innovation. And what we are seeing now, this notion of user control, is being supported by new regulations. New regulations are coming out that embed this principle of user control. And the biggest one at the moment is the General Data Protection Regulations in Europe. Anyone know the GDPR? Maybe raise your hand if you know. Okay. This regulation is, if you want, a new standard for data privacy. In the world now, for example, Facebook, there is a big problem with Facebook at the moment. Anyone know what the problem with Facebook? Can anyone tell me? Yes. What's the problem with Facebook today? Louder. Data leak. Yes. Oh, 5 minutes. Okay, I only have 5 more minutes left. I could go on for hours. But the point with Facebook is that data is being leaked and it's being analyzed. It means you do not have control over your data. In fact, you have little control over your data. But these new regulations will support you and you having control over your data, which works with Web 3.0, which is all about user control. And so, with that in mind, we build products that are in line with GDPR, where people retain control of their data and where the user is respected. And one of the examples of the product that we've built is BlockPass. This is a product that we have built. We have spent roughly about 1.5 years building this product. But this product is very important because it is the identity for the Web 3.0. It is to allow you to interact with the decentralized applications that will be providing all of the on-chain services that you can imagine, but to do so safely and compliantly. But more importantly, BlockPass does not keep your data. It does not keep your data. It verifies who you are. It conducts KYC. And when it completes the KYC, it deletes your data. And that is an important principle of Web 3.0. So you can use BlockPass to sign up for an ICO if you love ICOs. Do you participate in ICOs? Raise your hands if you do. No one likes ICOs. If you want to invest in a tokenized security, you can do it through the BlockPass app. If you want to sign up to any kind of online service, you can do it seamlessly through one identity. And you can use the same identity to transfer assets on-chain and interact with dApp services, for example, decentralized exchange, but do so safely and compliantly. So conclusion, Web 3.0 is the future of the internet. It will allow for peer-to-peer seamless interaction. But if Web 3.0 is the future, you need regulatory technology such as BlockPass, which I explained. And those products, when they are built, they must be built with the same notion of decentralization and in line with the global regulation towards user control and achieve effective compliance, such as being able to access services seamlessly. And I would argue that BlockPass is the first regulatory technology application that is built for Web 3.0. Thank you very much for your time. Any questions, I'm happy to hear.
Вопросы? Вопросы? Поблагодарим Адама. Готов принимать вопросы. Everything clear? You're done.
Thank you.
Спасибо большое. Спасибо.